Again with the Gnostics, or so-called Gnostics at least. I hear so many people say, hey, the Nag Hammadi library is there because St. Athanasius sent out a letter saying that the 27 books that we now have are the only ones to be read. And then he had a slave sent out with these books, and then he had him murdered, or the monks at the monastery had him murdered so nobody would know the location of these books. No, they're not to be read in church. Remember, the church preserved most of these writings. A lot of the lost gospels were not lost at all to the church; they were lost to the West. Now, certainly, the things in the Nag Hammadi library were lost, weren't revealed for a long time. But the Acts of Paul, the Acts of Philip, many of the Gospels were in monasteries in the East. The show I talk about, these banned books. We might have a different view of, of Paul and Thecla, or the infancy Gospel of James. If you're Antiochian, Thecla is one of the most revered saints. One of the most. We also call Mary Magdalene the 13th apostle. It's not the Gnostics that had the high view of Mary Magdalene, or the high view of women at all. They found a skeleton next to a wrapped up scroll of writings, not of all which had to do with the church or Christian writings. Some of them were writings from Platonic writings from Greece, which certainly weren't lost or hated by the church. As I've been saying, Gnosticism died out for a good reason. It wasn't accessible to the masses. It was this elite knowledge that you had to have. It wasn't faith in the resurrection. The church fathers, no matter how much you hate them, faith is accessible to everyone. Rich, poor, slave, free, male, female. This is not what's reflected in the alternative gospels. I won't even call them Gnostic. The gospels that we have are even to the critical scholars, are the earliest ones. For one, these conspiracy theories of, Athanasius had these destroyed. What are you talking about? Or that we never knew of any other gospels. Many of them they weren't to be read in church because they weren't to be. These are not writings that we're not going to destroy them. I asked this question before joining church. I said, well, we use the infancy Gospel of James. They said, no, we absolutely do not use the Proto-Evangelium. I said, but there's a lot of things. They said, yeah, there's traditions that the writer of the Proto-Evangelium of James put in there that were already around and that we kept in the church. Same thing goes for Acts of Paul and Thecla. But these were not to be read to the masses. These were not authentic texts. A lot of times they weren't on message. People can put in a lot of good facts, but it doesn't mean it's a good source for theology to reading for the masses to get the message across. Gnosticism was very elitist. And where are the Gnostic martyrs? It's funny. I've been saying this the whole time that people, Gnostic, it would have been more hippie-like, and children wouldn't have been hated and women wouldn't have been hated. The exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. Orthodoxy, it's the blood of Christ, and it's the resurrection that saves you. And these are beliefs you're going to die for, and they're life-changing. And you put your faith in them. And it's accessible to everyone and anyone. Not Gnosticism. You have to have secret knowledge. And the knowledge was to be kept from the masses. And that's how they viewed Jesus. My view is the writer of Mark had a lot of this information from various people, wrote it down. He may have even been an eyewitness. And that's where Gnosticism grows from, because you see Jesus explaining to the disciples in secret. And you had a branch off. You had, wait a minute, there's a lot more evidence put in. So you have John, which is the most orthodox of all the Gospels. You have Luke, and then they kept around Matthew. And my idea of why they kept around Matthew is because they had the Sermon on the Mount and it had the Great Commission. And with these four, you get a great idea of Christianity and what Jesus' message was. The Gnostics had a lot of secret teachings. He kept from people, and it wasn't for the world, and the resurrection didn't mean shit. Christ dying on the cross, there was no payment with his blood. Payment with his blood, that might get to the whole notion of blood sacrifice and all the stuff that we don't believe, but we do believe in the precious blood of Christ, and that the incarnation is important, and that Christ was born, came in the flesh. Christ was in the flesh. The Son came down, and he was 100% God and 100% man, and that was the Christ. And that he rose from the dead on the third day. These are not Gnostic beliefs. It's just strange. It sickens me when they just make up lies that they know aren't true. Well, there's a rumor that this monk was killed. A rumor from where? Started after they found the texts? Yeah. That these texts came from a monastery? How do you know that? This is ridiculous. The Gnostics have a much lower view of women. The Gospel of Judas, Judas is called a demon. Oh, it's daemon, which in no gospel is ever translated as spirit. It's always demon whenever you translate it in gospel. So why would you... I don't know. It's very frustrating. The Gnostic elitists. The one person I would single out is James F. Pandira's box, because as I go over it and I start watching my older videos, I'm like, no, I've only been watching him for a while. There's a lot of orthodox stuff that he believes that is absolutely counter-Gnostic, which is an extremely good thing. Again, just people who try to embrace the Gnostic Gospels just cuz. It's just this, I don't want to say liberalism, but it's just Christophobia, I guess you'd have to say, and I hate that word. Because I don't necessarily, but, well, we'll get into that. If I can, I'll chop this last bit off if I edit it, which I will in a couple days. Peace to you, and Christianity survived because of orthodoxy, not in spite of it.